Smart people often feel lonely in normal conversation because their mind keeps tracing patterns, hidden motives, and future results, long after everybody else thinks the topic is finished. That pain is usually structural, not dramatic, because everyday talk is built for coordination, quick emotion, and social comfort, while a deep mind keeps testing ideas and contradictions. This script follows four forces behind that feeling: different speed, different depth, Jung's individuation, and Jung's projection, because those four forces explain why the misunderstanding feels so personal. Most people use casual conversation to connect, signal mood, and move on, but a high IQ mind often uses the same moment to search for causes, patterns, and second-order effects. One person hears a short answer and feels satisfied, while the deep thinker keeps asking what the answer leads to, what it hides, and what happens if the pattern keeps growing. Nothing cruel has happened yet, but friction is already there, because the group feels the topic has reached a normal stopping point while the reflective person still feels the issue is open. That is why highly intelligent people are often called intense, hard to follow, or overcomplicated, even when they are only taking the same idea one layer deeper than the room wants. To the deep thinker, the conversation feels cut off too early, but to everyone else the same conversation feels stretched too far, and that mismatch creates chronic misunderstanding. Speed creates the next problem, because some minds do not move in one step at a time and instead see several implications at once in a single mental flash. When that kind of person speaks, they often start near the conclusion instead of walking through every middle step, so the speaker experiences a chain while the listener hears a leap. That is why a smart person can feel perfectly clear inside and still sound obscure outside, because their mind traveled through 5 links while the room only heard the last link. Then the same social request appears again and again. Explain more slowly, make it simpler, break it down, remove the extra layer, and keep the idea closer to surface level. After enough of those moments, the pain becomes larger than simple bad wording, because the person starts feeling pushed to shrink the very architecture of their thinking. The problem grows when the thinker uses verbal compression, because deep minds often pack many premises into one short sentence when all the premises feel linked together. The listener hears the shell of the sentence, but not the stored structure inside it, so the response touches only the surface and misses the deeper pattern entirely. That repeated underreading is exhausting, because the thinker feels like they are speaking in full color while the room keeps answering in black and white. A person like this may say one compact line that contains motive, contradiction, future consequence, and symbolic meaning, while the listener reacts only to the literal wording. After years of that pattern, life itself can start to feel like it happens at the wrong resolution, with the inner world sharp and the social world blurry. Jung helps explain why this becomes more than a speech problem, because he used the word individuation for the slow growth of a person into a more separate inner self. In simple language, individuation means becoming less ruled by group scripts, inherited slogans, and borrowed surfaces, and more ruled by what you actually see in yourself and others. Highly intelligent people often enter that process early because they notice hypocrisy early, they catch emotional doublespeak early, and they feel the gap between words and motives early. Once that happens, normal group life can start to feel strange, because the person hears the public statement and also hears the fear, vanity, or convenience hiding behind it. Other people may enjoy the surface of the moment, but the deep thinker keeps seeing a second layer, a third layer, and the hidden cost beneath both. That is why ordinary social life can feel thin to a very reflective person, because what looks easy and normal to the group can feel like a theater of simplification. Jung's idea matters because individuation does not first feel magical or peaceful, and it often begins as estrangement from the collective field around you. The person becomes less controlled by mass assumptions, but also less protected by mass agreement, so the freedom of seeing more arrives with the cost of belonging less. A high IQ person can become too skeptical to copy the group, too analytical to sound naive, and too inwardly divided to perform easy certainty on command. Groups do not usually enjoy people they cannot place quickly, so the group often solves the tension by turning a complex person into a simple label. That label may be cold, arrogant, distant, negative, or impossible to please, because a simple tag feels easier than facing a person who does not fit the script. This is where Jung's idea of projection becomes powerful, because projection happens when people place their own unwanted feelings or hidden traits onto someone else. A highly intelligent person becomes an easy screen for projection precisely because they can be hard to read and hard to place. If they stay quiet, people often call them proud instead of thoughtful, and if they speak with precision, people call them cold instead of careful. If they see danger early, people call them negative instead of accurate. And if they question shallow consensus, people call them difficult instead of honest. In many cases, the reaction is not about the person's real character at all, but about the discomfort their presence wakes up in other people. Around a deep thinker, another person may suddenly feel slow, exposed, inconsistent, or uncertain, and those feelings can sting more than most people want to admit. Instead of saying, "I feel insecure around this person," the group often builds an easier story and says, "This person is pretentious or impossible to satisfy." The projection calms the group, but it traps the intelligent person inside a false image that was created to protect everybody else's comfort. At that point, the deep thinker is no longer being met directly, because they are being seen through a symbolic role the group needs them to carry. Jung would say the shadow is active here, and the shadow means the parts of a person or group that stay disowned, hidden, and pushed out of sight. A group that loves ease, sameness, and quick certainty may push complexity, ambiguity, and uncomfortable truth-seeing into the shadow instead of dealing with them openly. Then one person arrives who naturally carries complexity, intensity, and layered perception, and the whole group starts reacting to that person as if they were the problem itself. The deep thinker may simply be naming what is already there, but the group experiences them as a disturbance because they bring hidden tensions into the light. That is why being misunderstood can feel so personal, because the pain is not only that your words were missed, but that other people's fears were hung on your face. High intelligence also creates a hard split between inner life and outer life, because inside the person may be processing symbols, motives, contradictions, and long-time horizons all at once. Outside, the same person is expected to answer quickly, smile smoothly, and move with ordinary social pacing, as if none of that inner processing exists. That becomes a double bind, because showing the full complexity can tire people, but hiding the complexity can make the person feel invisible. Over time, many intelligent people become socially split, with one part adapted enough to function and another part privately convinced that almost nobody meets them where they really live. Jung used the word persona for the social mask that helps a person move through the room without showing the whole self. The persona can handle meetings, small talk, and polite rules, but the deeper self behind that mask may still feel almost entirely unreceived. That growing gap between persona and deeper self becomes another cause of loneliness, because the room may like the performance while never seeing the person behind it. There is another reason the pain lasts so long. Intelligence often increases sensitivity to contradiction without increasing social reward for pointing contradiction out. Useful intelligence gets praised when it solves a problem safely, but disruptive intelligence gets punished when it notices that a relationship, institution, or belief system does not add up. A high IQ person may see the pattern long before the group wants to admit it, so when they speak they sound early, sharp, or unwelcome instead of wise. Later events may prove that person right, but the social cost was already paid when the first warning sounded too heavy for the room. That creates a painful sequence many deep thinkers know by heart. They are dismissed when early, resented when persistent, and only later appreciated when events finally catch up. Jung's typology matters here too, especially when intuition is strong, because intuitive minds track what is forming under the surface instead of only what is already obvious. An intuitive mind may react to a pattern that is only beginning, because the whole shape is felt before every piece can be explained in neat, linear order. To other people that can sound vague, mystical, or overreactive, but from the inside it often feels exact because the latent pattern is already visible. Society usually validates that kind of perception only after obvious proof arrives, so the person carrying it often feels half alien and half accused until the evidence catches up. This is one reason many deep thinkers become quiet over time, because silence sometimes grows after years of giving the full thought and watching it land badly. They may learn that speaking the whole pattern costs too much energy, so they offer a trimmed version while the fuller truth stays alive only in private. That private world can become rich, but it can also become lonely, because the person knows they are thinking in nuance while public life keeps asking for slogans. There is a moral side to this as well, because intelligence often makes simple belonging harder by revealing competing truths, hidden costs, and unintended consequences. Once a person sees those layers, tribal certainty starts to feel thin, sentimental simplification starts to feel false, and borrowed beliefs start to feel exactly that, borrowed. Groups usually trust people who mirror group feeling, but they often distrust the person who brings extra complexity into a simple moral picture. Jung warned about collective possession and mass-mindedness, the danger of people being carried by group emotion without enough inner examination. A person who resists that pull may look disloyal before they look insightful, because they refuse the comfort of false clarity. That is why intelligent people are sometimes judged as emotionally lacking when they are not lacking emotion at all and are instead refusing a shallow certainty. The validating part is simple, even if it hurts. Highly intelligent people often feel misunderstood because the mismatch is real and built into how they move through the world. Their minds move faster, so others miss the links, and their minds go deeper, so ordinary exchanges feel unfinished before the real question has even been touched. Individuation pulls them away from easy belonging, projection places false meanings on them, and the shadow makes them carry traits the group does not want to face. That is why the experience can feel larger than one bad conversation, because the person is not only unheard, but also seen through an image that was never truly theirs. The outside world may call that loneliness oversensitivity, but Jung's frame shows a different picture, one where a differentiated mind keeps colliding with collective simplification. The tragedy is not that the deep thinker has no words, but that the world often asks for a flatter version of them before it will listen at all. Even praise can feel strange in that pattern, because being called brilliant means little if the deeper pattern you saw was never really understood. So when a highly intelligent person says nobody truly gets me, that sentence often names a structure rather than a fantasy or a wish to feel special. The clash begins in conversation, grows inside group life, deepens through projection, and lasts because the mind that sees more also loses the shelter of shared illusion. That loss is heavy, but it explains why the loneliness feels so exact and why the misunderstanding can stay alive even around familiar people. Jung gives names to each piece of that pain: individuation for the distance, projection for the false image, persona for the mask, and shadow for what the group rejects. Once those names click, the pattern stops looking random and starts looking like the predictable cost of a mind that cannot fully live on borrowed surfaces. Many people assume intelligence automatically brings admiration, but ordinary social life rewards useful, well-timed, non-threatening intelligence far more than truth that disrupts a group script. Intelligence that notices hypocrisy, symbolic inconsistency, or emotional doublespeak often unsettles the room, so the room protects itself by simplifying the person who noticed it. That is why the misunderstood feeling can survive even inside praise, because people may value the results of the mind while still rejecting the deeper way that mind really sees. If this Jung view hit close to home, the next video should be on the shadow itself, because the shadow explains why groups fear the person who makes hidden things visible.